Jim Sprinkles here with another video. Welcome back. Today we're continuing from last week talking about Cypher System combat, but more specifically, how to make it more deadly. If you did miss last week's video, I would suggest going to check that one out first, as this is just a continuation from that one, and you can click that by the link in the corner up here. So I do want to make this video because I do see online all the time that Cypher System combat is not very deadly, and that is not the case. I'd like to give a huge thanks to Anthony or Spigs18 from the Cypher Unlimited crew. Thank you so much for helping me with this video. It helped me talk about what points we need to cover. It was a really good chat. And if you haven't checked them out, please do. The link is in the description for their Twitch, their Discord, and their YouTube channel. Give them a follow. Also, a huge thanks to McRoMusic for letting me use their tracks in this video and last week's video. Link in the description to their Patreon, their Twitter, and their other socials. I also now have a coffee, so if you wanted to follow me there as well as give me some support, I would love that. Otherwise, you can follow me in my usual social medias: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Alright, let's get on with the video. So firstly, the Cypher system is as deadly as you want to make it. So if you're not finding it deadly, you need to make it deadly. Simple. As Anthony said to me when I was originally playing this video, it's not about mechanics, it's about the player's choices. Choices are way more important than mechanical crunch in the Cypher system. And I think it was just an off-the-cuff comment, but I don't know, Anthony, you tell me in the comments below, but it was just a beautiful quote, and it really sums up the Cypher system quite well. 100%. It's the choices that make the game deadly. The mechanics are there as well to support that, of course, but it's really the choices. One of the most effective ways that I have found to make the Cypher system deadly is to give your enemies armor. Seems pretty straightforward, but I mean a lot of armor. So one of the tough encounters that I created for one of my groups was this giant crab with a thick carapace, and that had level 5 armor. So that meant that light weapons and medium weapons would do no damage unless they put effort into their attacks. And because my players didn't have heavy weapons, they had to put effort in, and if they did, I would have made the armor 6. But what this does is that already they have to spend their points from their stat pools before they even hit the creature, or before the creature even has a turn if it's low on the initiative order. And that's really taxing their pools, and the more you tax their pools for them to use that effort to hit, the more deadly that's going to be, because as soon as your pools run out, you go down the damage track and you become impaired, and everything becomes more costly. On top of that, the crab is now going to start attacking, and that's also going to be depleting their pools. And just like that, this counter has got very deadly, because you have to spend points from your pool to even hit it. Sorry, to even do damage to it. But there's so many other ways to make it deadly. Something I really like to do is give your enemies ciphers. After all, if the players can use ciphers, why can't they enemies? It makes no sense if they don't. Or if you're going to have ciphers as loot, why wouldn't that NPC or that wizard or whatever genre you're playing use that cipher against the players? It just makes no sense. Of course they would. And depending on what kind of game you're going for, if it's like a villain with lackeys, maybe these lackeys are given a cipher and saying, if things go bad, use this. And if that lackey is just blind faith, it might be just a singularity cipher, it might be an explosion. That way, if it is, they might take themselves out to hurt the players. And ciphers can be very deadly. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but some of them have a lot of damage. Maybe it's a cipher that summons a powerful creature, or it message a target to come over. Or maybe it's just they have a communicator and they can communicate to someone to come over to help them. And all of a sudden, this combat's going to get a lot more deadly because you've got more enemies coming in to help. So this now has created a time limit to finish this encounter before the tough guy comes. Or maybe if it's a supernatural element, he just summons a demon or an angel. Now all of a sudden, you're facing something out of this world that you're not prepared for. You might have been prepared to deal with this member of this cult or thieves guild, or maybe a rogue rebel group going against the government, or a terrorist. But if he's got this powerful friend in the military, or if it's fantasy, an angel or a demon, all of a sudden this combat has just upped the ante in the deadly scale. Especially if it's a modern setting and you're summoning otherworldly beings. That's terrifying. If a clever villain or a clever NPC is watching the players, they can use that and exploit that. So maybe that's that organization. The players keep foiling their plans. So now they've been watching the players, looking for weaknesses and to exploit. Like that warrior with a low intellect pool. All of a sudden, all their defenses and all their strength and all their speed rolls, all their speed defense doesn't matter because they've got this glaring weakness that the enemy has exploited. And these intellect attacks can chip away that intellect pool that they weren't prepared to lose points from. On top of that, if you're also attacking with like a squad and there's also been attacked melee or he's trying to defend his friends, he may also be taking damage to his might pool. So we're taxing 2 pools at once, hopefully. And as soon as one of those pools drops to 0, now he's going to be impaired and then he's going to start taxing even more. He's got all this might, sure, but all of a sudden it all costs that much more and it doesn't mean, and all that edge doesn't matter because it's going to cost more and more and more. And he's already in danger of falling down the damage track. Because if they do go down the damage track, that's 1/3 of the way to being dead. Because the damage track is the true representation of your character's health, not your stat pools. Your stat pools is just how much effort and how much energy you have. But the damage track is what is your health. Because you fall down 1 level, that's 1/3. You fall down 2, that's 2/3. If you really want to make the game deadly, skip the stat pools and just attack their damage track immediately. Have an enemy that if they fail their intellect defense or their speed defense, that they fall down 1 level down the damage track. Or if you really want to up the ante, 1 or 2. Because that's terrifying. That's 1 or 2/3 of the way dead. Because as soon as you fall down 1 level in the damage track, you're in danger.
I'm in danger!
I used an encounter that did make the players fall down 2 levels on the damage track. And yes, they can use a recovery order to bring it up and they can spend time to try and bring that up 1 level. But if it's 2, they immediately go debilitated. And then you can use the narrative to say, or the GM intrusion to say that they can't do anything until they wake up. And then you're at this monster's mercy because you're debilitated in front of it. And if it's a hungry beast, it's just going to tear at you. And just like that, there's nothing you can do. You're dead. So really, I actually think the Cypher System is quite deadly and it is quite easy to kill a character if you really wanted to. Especially with the recovery rolls. And I think that the way that the recovery rolls are set out in Cypher System, the combat is already deadly enough. Because you can't just rest and automatically get all your stat points back. If the players in Cypher System are going from one encounter to another, whether that's a social encounter directly to a combat encounter, their stat points are already somewhat taxed, perhaps. And you can only keep doing that so long, because after all, you get a d6 plus your tier back in a recovery roll. And if you roll average or badly, you're not going to get all your pulls back. It's not like D&D, you can't just have a long rest and get all your hit points back. Well, in this case, you can't get all your stat points back. And I think that's fantastic and it makes sense. If you have a real tough battle and you get knocked around and you get hurt and you've used a lot of effort one day, the next day you might just really need a rest to get that back. And I love that about the system. If the players go from encounter to encounter, whether it's social to combat or combat to combat, their stat pools are already somewhat taxed already. If they have a time constraint as well, then they may not have time to rest between encounters, and each encounter they go into is going to feel more harder and harder and harder because they're already so taxed and they're already so close to being impaired. And if they start the encounter impaired, they're just going to feel like it's going to be real tough. And not to mention that there's not a lot of abilities, there's very few abilities in fact, that can actually restore a character back to life. When you meet an NPC that will initiate combat, the players might have learned that they're a level 3 guard. Now, something they might not know is that he's a level 6 when it comes to speed defense because he's got a shield and he's been training how to dodge and be quick and nimble his whole life. Now, they may have not known that, so they're prepared for a level 3, but when they go to do their attack roll, it misses. And all of a sudden, this encounter is a lot more tricky because they thought it was easy, but it's actually trickier than they thought. Not to mention, you can have characters move up levels or down levels depending on the situation while you're in combat. And you can do that narratively, there's so many ways you can do that. So one of the ways that I like is the classic trope, "This isn't even my final form, are you ready for this?" And they transform into another being or another creature that's even more powerful. But if you're going for a more mundane setting, you might have that grizzled guard and he's like, "I've never actually had to try in this city. It looks like I'm actually going to have to put in a bit more effort. And then all of a sudden the level increases and there's a narrative reason behind that as well. But unless the players have an ability that tells them what their target number is, you don't have to give that out. You can make an enemy look very tough and intimidating and scary and use epic music as it approaches the room, approaches in the dungeon or whatever you're using this encounter, and he's only level 3, but you don't tell the players that, so they're ready to put in a lot of effort, and they're taxing their stat pools for no reason. And then when it comes to the next encounter, whether it's social or what, it's going to be more deadly because they've already spent those points on this easy encounter. Or vice versa, they don't bother to check or ask what the level is, and the encounter's way too hard for them, they weren't prepared for it. There's so many great ways to make the game deadly, you just have to think outside the box. You can't just look at the mechanics only to make the game deadly, it does require some imagination. But not every combat needs to be deadly. In fact, it doesn't even need to be hard. Like, we can have easy combat, and that's a lot of fun. I love easy combat from time to time, but it is really good for the players to have a win and make the characters feel quite powerful in the world. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than having a game where your character just feels like they're struggling through everything and they're like, why am I doing this? Everything in the world is so hard. I just feel like that doesn't really make sense, because if the players are meant to be heroes, whether it isn't a grimdark fantasy or something a bit more lighthearted, there should be some challenges that they can overcome quite easily. Because in real life, some people find some things really easy, and that's okay, it's realistic. Also, there are plenty of ways to make the game feel deadly in an untraditional way. Maybe you have to escort a very important noble out of town and there's assassins after them. The assassins may not have much of a threat to the players, but the real deadliness comes from that noble who doesn't know how to defend himself, and these assassins are quick and deadly, and they're going to try and ignore you and just attack the noble. That is a deadly encounter, untraditionally deadly for sure, but the players are going to have to work together and work on some real creative ways to make sure that this noble is safe. And you can do these encounters that have a different flair to them, even if it is really easy for the players and the enemies are no threat to them. If they just overwhelm the players and try and get to that noble, and maybe that will really challenge the players, and that is quite deadly to that noble, maybe not to the players, but to that noble. You'll notice I didn't really talk much of tactical combat because I'm not really a huge fan of tactical combat. I don't really enjoy the nitty gritty of, oh, there's flanking when I come in the side, or backstab bonuses and things. I don't really enjoy that much. I do like to have a big map out so you players know exactly where they are, what's in their environment and that sort of thing. I think that's very cool, and the grid to maybe do that, that might work for you. But personally, I'm not a big fan of the gridded tactical combat and have the distances and the movement and things. So that's why I didn't really cover it. I did think though, if you did want to try and do something, you could maybe do like a flanking bonus or a backstab bonus where you get an asset, or you could do it that your light weapon does a medium amount of damage and medium weapon does a heavy amount of damage, same so on and so on. But like I said, it's not really tactical combat, it's not for me, so I didn't really want to cover it. If you do want me to do a video on it, I could probably talk to someone who knows a bit more about tactical combat more than me, and I could come up with something. If you do want to hear about that, put that in the comments below and I'll see what I can do in the future. Honestly, I think combat's fun and I do enjoy, don't get me wrong, I think combat's important. There is a reason why there's a big chunk of the rules that go to combat. That's the bit that really needs the rules. But also, I think there's so many more interesting encounter types than just combat. I know Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition talk about the 3 pillars of play being social encounters, combat encounters, and exploration. And I think they're all important. I don't know why we put so much emphasis on combat when the other encounters get a little bit forgotten. I love social encounters. I love trying to weasel my way into a party that I'm not invited to, or trying to convince that guard to let me pass because I'm an important noble when I'm not. And I absolutely love exploring a new place and investigating and trying to work out why this town's so crazy, or why, or what's going on over here in this dungeon. Why is there weird abominations coming out of it? I love that type of adventures, and combat's good, don't get me wrong, but please, give me more social, more exploration, more investigation in my games. That's what I really love personally. And to have a great game, you actually don't need combat in these games. I've played plenty of sessions where we've barely picked up a dice to roll, even like investigation. It's just been all role play, and it's just been a few dice rolls to maybe lie to the other person in the party. And if I just want to go and kill a heap of monsters, I'll play something like a video game, because they do combat better in my opinion. Do you know what you really can't do in a video game, but you can do in a tabletop game like Cypher or Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder? Is you can have a shared storytelling experience with all your friends, and you can work together to make this beautiful story that brings hours of entertainment. And you all get be a part of this world and change it the way that you want to. And it's a beautiful thing. And I wish we could focus more on the storytelling than just combat. But what do I know? I'm just a random guy on the internet. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy the video. If you do want to see what I'm doing and what I'm up to, you can follow me in my other socials, linked below. Otherwise, if you really did enjoy the video, please like, subscribe, and share to your friends. If you don't have any friends, just join the Cypher System Discord. There's plenty of us there. We'll all be your friends, including myself. Have a lovely day. Keep rolling those dice, but don't let them define you.